everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 356 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I could not be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to talk about being aggressive financially. And I know this may lead you to different thoughts about risk-taking and all these different types of things, but being aggressive financially looks different for a lot of different people, and it's not always a bad thing. In fact, in many cases, it is a good thing, right? But I want us to be able to differentiate from situations where being aggressive financially is a good thing and where being aggressive financially is a bad thing, right? And how we may need to either temper our aggression or maybe pick up our aggression a little bit to get the best financial outcomes possible for ourselves over the long run. So stick around for a discussion of all that and more in today's episode. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. Now, as you guys know, one of the tenets of this show and of what I teach on a day-to-day basis, on this podcast, on this YouTube channel, is that, there's a plan to be followed financially. And whether or not it's the plan that I lay out for you is 100% up to you, right? But I know that this is an efficient plan, and it's the plan that I believe is most efficient in getting you from where you are to long-term financial freedom. Right. So I think it's a good way to build wealth. I think it's a good way to be very generous. I think it's a good way to do a lot of good things financially. Right. But when you look at this plan, you can interpret it in many different ways, and you can do a lot of little things, a lot of the minutia in very, very different ways, right? Sometimes you can do it very conservatively. You can do things slowly. You can do things very, analytically, right? You can really think about things and make sure everything's absolutely perfect, or maybe just move slowly and just go step by step, really, methodically. You could do that, or you could be very aggressive, right? You can do things fast, and you can do things, quickly. You can do things with a lot of fervor and with a lot of intensity and excitement, right? And neither one of those are wrong based on where you're at in the plan. Right? I would suggest that we treat different parts of the plan differently, right? And I would suggest that we do different things based on where we are at in our financial lives. There is no catch-all as to exactly how conservative or how aggressive you should be in your financial decision making, right? There is no perfect answer. Now I'm going to try to clear up some of the blurred lines today, but there is no perfect answer, and we all have different risk tolerances and things like that, because the ability for us to work in a conservative or aggressive way is typically based on our risk tolerance. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's 100% based on our willingness or unwillingness to do something, or based on just simply our knowledge of some subject. So what I want to do today is I want to walk right down the financial action plan, and I want to talk about whether we should be aggressive in this particular step, or whether we should be conservative in this step, and where aggression and conservatism actually fall in the making of the financial decisions that you need to make, right? So we'll go through all 9 parts of the financial action plan, and I'll show you, what I think. So we'll just start with number 1. The first part is what? A unique monthly budget. Every month you should be creating, at least monthly, a unique budget. So budgets do what? They take your income, they take your expenses, then you track your expenses throughout the month, right? That's what we're doing when we're budgeting. And we need it to be unique to the month, because every month at least looks slightly different. So if this is the case, I think we should be very aggressive in our thought process about, I need to have a budget. I need to follow the budget. There needs to be some intensity there. There needs to be a lot of intentionality, which is being like, we have to do this. This is something that I'm going to do. It's going to help me, right? Be very intense about getting a budget together and trying to follow that budget. Now, don't get all legalistic and crazy about it, right? But give yourself some grace, but you do need to be very intense about the fact that budgets are going to help you. They're going to help you to plan your financial life out. Okay, so be very aggressive in that form of creating a budget. But also, when we're creating a budget, we should also be very conservative. Now, what do I mean here? I mean that when we are estimating what our income and expenses are, we should do so in a conservative manner. Okay, because if you are going to budget, I don't know about you, I would rather expect less income and more expenses, right? Therefore, the least amount of money that I could be left with to spend discretionarily, right? I would rather be left with that than think, okay, I've got all of this money left over because I had a lot of income and not a lot of expenses, and then that not be true, right? I would rather deal with not necessarily worst case scenario, but I'd rather deal with a more conservative estimate of the amount of discretionary income I'm going to have instead of a very loose estimate, right? Being very aggressive about what your income is going to be and very aggressive about the fact that you're going to cut down your expenses to some absurdly low level. So be aggressive when it comes to the fact that you need a budget and you need to be doing it, but be conservative in the actual creation of the budget, okay? Then, in the second part of the financial action plan, I tell you to get a month's worth of expenses, right? And just have that as a beginner emergency fund. Have that as an emergency fund where you can start, right? A place where you can have some money set aside in case emergencies occur. Now, this needs to be done extremely aggressively, okay? And what I mean by extremely aggressively is fast, okay? You need to build up an emergency fund quickly. Okay, and this beginning part especially quickly because before this, it's assumed that you have no savings, right? You have no money saved up for a rainy day. So at least having something started as a rainy day fund, as an emergency fund, is vital. So be very aggressive about getting that going. Very straightforward, go fast, and get that done as quickly as you can. Okay, now, the emergency fund is a conservative idea in and of itself, right? It's saying that, hey, I need money set aside in case something bad were to happen. Because if we were just super aggressive people across the board, then we would say, forget emergency funds. We don't need them, right? We'll just invest everything that we have and whatever, right? We wouldn't have any money that was safe from the vicissitudes of the market, the volatility of the market at any given time. So we need to be very aggressive about putting that money away. But again, we're not aggressively investing that in any way. It is a conservative step that we need to do very, very quickly. Then the third part of the financial action plan says to do what, right? It says to, if you have an employer match offered to you in a 401k, 403b, TSP, any type of employer-sponsored retirement account, if you have a match offered to you, take the match. No more, no less. Take the match because it is free money. Okay? Now, this is a step in which we are not being super aggressive in the amount of money that we're putting away. Right? We're actually kind of holding back a bit in the amount of money that we could put away for our future. Okay? We're being relatively conservative there. We're just taking the match. And matches differ in the amount that they actually are, but we're taking the match. Okay? This is a very conservative thing to do because, hey, it's free, right? Let me take it. I'll take what's given to me, right? That's really all we're doing here. Now, the place where this can get tricky, and I'll get to this when we talk about the sixth part of the financial action plan. I'll break this down a little more, granularly, right? Is what you're actually investing in, what you're actually putting your money into. Because you can make decisions as to what you put your money into that is either very aggressive or very conservative, okay? So I want to keep that in mind as we move forward, but that's not the real key to that step, right? That step's more about just getting the match, right? Not so much about what you're invested in. What you're invested in is going to be the real big focus of the sixth part of the financial action plan. We're putting a lot of focus and a lot of energy into investing, but again, we will get to that here shortly, okay? But the fourth part of the financial action plan is what? Is to get out of all consumer debt other than your mortgage. And this should be, in my opinion, the most aggressive step that you take. Okay, you should be as aggressive as you need to be in this step. You need to do everything in your power to get your debt paid off. Okay, this could mean selling things that you don't need. This could mean taking on extra jobs. It could mean any number of things, but you have to be very intense and very intentional about getting out of consumer debt. And if you do this, what this does is it frees up all of your cash flow in order to be able to invest, buy a house, do all these things, give generously, spend money in the way that you actually want to spend it, and not just continue to throw it to people that you owe money to. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to continue to owe money to someone, right? So we need to be very intentional about paying off our debt, and we need to be very aggressive, right? Use all of the extra income you have, every single bit. Don't put away any more money in savings than what you have as that 1 month of expenses. Don't invest any more than you are to just get the match, right? Every other dollar that you come across should come towards that debt. And you should be really cutting down your spending, not spending much money anywhere else, completely focused on paying off your debt. Be very, very aggressive there. And being aggressive there will allow you to actually have some comfort, right? To actually have some room in your financial life later on. And that's what we all want, right? We all ultimately want a place where we're comfortable financially, but you will not get there. And it's going to be very difficult to get there if you're really, dragged down by a bunch of consumer debt. And the only way to effectively get rid of consumer debt is to be aggressive about it, because then you're very likely to just leave it behind forever, which is what I want for all of you. I want you to leave consumer debt behind once you actually get out of it, okay? So do that very aggressively. There's really nothing conservative about that other than the thought process of getting out of debt, right? Because people who are very risk-taking would say that, debt can be a good thing, and you can use debt for this and debt for that. It is a conservative thought process to get out of debt, right? But we need to take the action in a very aggressive way if we want to be effective in our finances over the long term. So again, like with any of these steps, there's the way in which we act, and then there's actually what the thought process behind the action is, right? Whether it's aggressive or conservative. Getting out of debt is a conservative idea, right? But the aggression should come with the actual action and the actual doing of the getting out of debt. So just keep that in mind if you are in that part, if you are in that place, or you're going to be soon. That's how you should think about that. Now, then there's the fifth part of the financial action plan, which is to take the emergency fund that you initially had built up, right? 1 month's worth of expenses, and expand that into 4 to 6 months of household expenses, right? So this would get you to a point where if most emergencies occurred, you could pay for them in cash, which is fantastic, right? This would be an awesome thing to have in place, especially if you're a homeowner, especially if you have kids, especially if you, have any medical issues or anything like that, right? Anything that could occur. This covers quite a bit, right? 4 to 6 months of household expenses is a fair amount of cash to have setting aside. Now, having this much money set aside and getting this much money set aside, again, one is a conservative idea. It's a conservative idea because we're saying, hey, bad things can happen, and I want to have liquid cash in order to take care of these bad things, right? And do you see this pattern? This pattern is that all of these things that I'm telling you to do are basically conservative ideas, right? These are things that are saying, well, we want to have money, and so to have money, we need to not owe people money, and we know that bad things can happen, so we should put some money away for that, right? We're conservatively planning for our financial future as we walk through this, right? So it's a conservative idea, but we also need to get this emergency fund built up very, very quickly, or we need to be aggressive about this, because once we do that, then we have built our financial foundation. Okay, and we need to be very aggressive. Again, I was telling you about the aggression in building your initial emergency fund, budgeting, well, not in that order, but those two, right? Then, paying off your debt, and now getting this emergency fund fully built up. All of that should be done very aggressively to get your financial foundation set, right? To this point, we're just building a foundation for your financial life, right? And then you can actually build on the foundation. Because think about it, the foundation is just something that gets laid. Right? Think about when people build homes, you're not building up a foundation typically. It's something that gets laid down, right? It's laid down as this base, as something that is level in most houses, right? It's something that is level, something that you can build on top of, right? And that's what we want to do with our finances. We need to aggressively go about building our financial foundation, and then we can build things on top of it in a way that may be a little different. But again, this is all a conservative mindset because people who are very aggressive or very risky financially, what they will do is they will not lay a foundation. They'll just start to try to build wherever they can, however they can, right? And for some people it works, but for a lot of people it doesn't, okay? And what we need to keep in mind is that the tenets of conservative financial management on a personal level are having emergency savings, getting out of debt, investing for the long term. And those are the things that I'm constantly teaching you guys. Okay. So again, it's the efficient path and it will work, but we need to do it aggressively to get that financial foundation set. And then, right, once we get that emergency fund, everything's good, then we can get into the sixth part of the financial action plan, which I will spend a little extra time on here because there's something a little different about this sixth part of the financial action plan because this has so much to do with investing, right? And when you think about finances and aggressive and conservative, you think about investing, okay? Or at least most of us do think about investing. Now, the sixth part of the financial action plan is investing at least 15% of your income for your future, for the long term, right? Now, 15% is an aggressive number, right? So this is a more aggressive step. Okay, and this is investing, not just saving. So again, we are ticking away from just a conservative mindset here. But the conservative nature of it is that you have to have money invested for the future, and you're going to need money when you're going to retire. And the most efficient way to do that, and the most historically proven way to do that, is by investing in the stock market, investing in real estate over a long period of time, and not having a bunch of debt with that real estate either, right? And doing so in a predictable way, systematically over a long period of time. And doing so in large amounts because the biggest impact on the amount of money that you're ultimately going to have when you're ready to retire or stop investing or whatever is the amount of money you actually put in to the investments, not necessarily the rate of return, right? Because everybody can make about the same amount in return, but what's going to make the difference is the amount of money you actually put away over a long period of time. Okay, so I say 15% of your income. That's a pretty aggressive number. But then you go, okay, I'm going to invest this, but should I invest it conservatively or aggressively? Because you say 15% of your income for, anybody, any age, right? And I've talked before about how, if you're getting closer to retirement, you may need to, ratchet that up some more in order to get to where you need to be. But ultimately, 15% of your income for most people, definitely people in their 20s, definitely people in their 30s. You start getting into your 40s, though, and you may need to ratchet that up a bit in order to get to where you want to get to. But ultimately, the question comes, well, what do I invest in, right? We're not all the same age. We don't all have the same risk tolerances, and that is completely true, okay? But just generally, right, I talk about investing aggressively in the amount of money that I'm putting away, right? I say I'm as aggressive as anyone in the amount as a percentage of income that me and my wife actually put away. We are aggressive investors in that nature. Now, I'm also relatively aggressive in how I invest my money, where I invest my money, okay? And that doesn't mean that you have to be. Okay, because we've talked before about risk taking and our investments and how we should make those decisions. And it really comes down to three things, right? It comes down to our time horizon, how long we have to invest, right? It comes down to our investment objective, right? Why we are investing, what we are investing for, right? And then the last thing is our own risk tolerance, right? How we feel about our investments. Can we sleep at night? What do we feel about the way we invest? And that is going to dictate how aggressively, if you want to think of it in that way, you are going to invest your money. Okay, but I would suggest that the more time that you have, right, even if we're talking about risk tolerance and things like that, and you should take those things into account. Okay, but do not discount the power of the S&P 500, the power of some of these indexes to grow your money over a long period of time if you have a hard time picking your own investments. But I'll tell you this, just full disclosure, right? This is me telling you not everything I'm invested in, but giving you an idea, okay? Me and my wife, we have a lot of our money in index funds, right? Via, her 401k, some within our IRAs, right? Some of those things. But some of those index funds are like small cap index funds, and small cap companies, as we know, are more volatile. There's more variation in their price. But over the long term, the small companies as a group tend to have very good returns, and on a risk return basis should have greater returns than large caps, even though that doesn't always hold, right? We hold some mid caps, we hold some international, we hold some emerging markets, right? So some things that are a bit more quote unquote risky than just holding the S&P 500, but are large indexes that, track whatever types of companies those are. Okay, so there's a bit more aggression there. Not only that, I invest in some individual stocks. Okay. Now, as a percentage of everything that we have and everything that we invest, it is not a huge percentage. I do not, bet the farm on individual stocks, and I don't let them overweight my portfolio. Okay. But we know that the more, you're picking individual stocks, that's taking more risk. That's being more aggressive. That's believing that you can make greater returns than the index, at least with some percentage of your money. Right. And so there's a little more aggression there. If you speculate in any way, that's a little more aggression there, right? So again, full disclosure, right? I have done some speculation, whether it be in cryptocurrency or whatever else. Now, I follow my own rule. I don't let it be more than 5 to 10% of my entire portfolio, but there is still some speculation that's been done in crypto and some individual stocks that there was no reasonable basis to invest in, but trying to get some bumps in the dollar value. But again, this is not the bulk of what we have, and it is not the bulk of what we do, right? Because over the long term, we want to do what is historically proven, which is putting money away systematically into an index fund, into diversified mutual funds and ETFs and things of the like, right? So just based on those three things I talked about earlier, right? Your time horizon, your investment objective, and your own risk tolerance, you can make a decision as to what you want to invest in. But I would say relative to most, I have a pretty aggressive investing style. But that doesn't mean that I'm just purely speculation, because that's not aggressive. That's dumb. Okay, people think that's aggressive investing. That is not. That's just speculating, and it's just dumb, right, to do that on a broad scale and not have actual investments and not have an actual strategy that you're trying to follow, okay? So have a strategy, understand yourself, understand what your objectives are and how long you have, and then look at things and try to make the best decisions. But I will say, the younger you are, you can take more risk and you can get more return. Okay, if you're older, if you're closer to retirement, you want to take some risk off the table. That's not the dumbest thing you could do. That's actually pretty smart. There's a reason that all of these target date retirement funds, they start to take risk off the table as you get older, because they're like, hey, you're getting closer to retirement, and you're going to need that money. You don't want to lose the money that you're going to need to actually live on. Okay, so this step can be as aggressive or conservative as you would like, but in the amount that you're putting away, it should be very aggressive. And then at how aggressive or conservative you should be investing your money is all based on those three things that we talked about. And I would suggest that you go back and you watch that episode that I did on taking risks. Are you taking too much risk? Are you not taking enough? Whatever. And that will help you to make decisions as to how you should invest your money, right? But I will move forward. I'll move forward past the sixth part of the financial action plan, and I'll move on to the seventh part. The seventh part is concurrent with the sixth, that you should pay off your mortgage early. Okay, now this is a conservative idea, because people who are very aggressive and risky, they would say, well, why would I not just keep borrowing at 2.5% or 2% and just do this forever and keep making this mortgage payment and just invest and pay it out of the investments and just make the difference? Why would I not do that, right? But it is a conservative idea to not have any payments and to have that excess cash flow in your pocket. Okay, so if I can have that excess cash flow in my pocket, I would like to have it. Now, I don't do this extremely aggressively either. right? I do this with any excess I have left over after I am doing my investing process, but I want to be a little bit intense about it and just get it paid off early, because we don't want to have a mortgage around for 30 years. People sign 30-year mortgages when they're 60 years old. It doesn't make any sense, right? You're going to have a mortgage until you're 90. No thanks, right? I want to get a mortgage paid off and then not have a house payment anymore. Okay, and that is a conservative idea, but we can do it with a little bit of aggression, but I don't want to put too much stress on that particular idea. Then, the eighth part of the financial action plan, so we have our mortgage paid off, we're investing, but now we are going to max everything out. So now we're getting very aggressive in the amount that we're investing. Now, we're not necessarily changing the way in which we invest or what we invest in, right? So that aggression or conservatism is not necessarily going to change, okay? But we're being more aggressive with the amount that we're putting away. And the reason that we're doing this is because we have a lot of excess cash flow, and we can, right? We can actually put more money away and feel good about doing so, because we don't owe anyone anything. We don't owe anybody anything on our home, right? We don't owe anybody anything on credit cards or student loans or whatever else, right? We don't owe anyone any money, and so we can put more money in that place. But this is not something you have to be super intense about. It's just, work towards maxing things out, right? Put more money away, and you can be more financially successful in doing so. Then the ninth part of the financial action plan is to give extremely generously, okay? And we should be aggressive about this all the time, right? But the idea of giving is a conservative idea, because you're saying, hey, I have excess and I'm not just going to use it all on myself. I can be generous, right? But we should all be generous. We should all have an open hand and not be that type of aggressive about our giving, but be very willing to give, right? Be very open to giving and being generous to others. And that's something that is a key tenet of our financial action plan, and something that you should always be doing. But this ninth part is just saying, hey, you don't owe anyone anything. You're maxing out your investments. What else are you using money on? You should be giving at just an all-time high at that point. And so it's just a reminder to really be open-handed and really be generous, because that's when we are at our best, because that is how God made us, to be givers in the same way that He is on a daily basis to us, okay? So that is the financial action plan. That's how I think about it from an aggressive or conservative standpoint. I'm sure there's many other details of our financial lives that you can choose to be more or less aggressive about, right? But ultimately, right, what's the underlying tone here? The underlying tone is that I want you to be very intentional about your financial life. I want you to know what you're doing, and I want you to attack it, right? I especially want you to attack building your financial foundation like I talked about earlier. I want that to be done, okay? But if we do those things, then we can kind of lay back and be a little more conservative in how we make our decisions and things like that, right? But all of this entire plan is based in conservative financial management, right? This entire plan is based in the idea that, we are going to not spend more than we make, right? We're not going to be in debt. We're going to have money set aside for a rainy day because it is going to rain, right? We're going to invest in our futures because we're not going to rely on the government to take care of us or our company to take care of us. We are going to take that into our own hands, right? And all of this together becomes a good financial plan. All of this comes together, and it creates financial freedom. It creates financial independence and security over a long period of time. And that's what I want for every single one of you guys. And that's why I'm sitting here preaching it, right? So I don't want you to think that just because you're a conservative person or you don't know so much about personal finances that you can't apply these steps in the way that I just said it, because I kind of broke it down, right? And there's more specific episodes that I've done about the financial action plan. You can go back and watch those as well, or listen to those, whatever you're doing. But I think that the whole idea here is that we are taking a conservative financial plan and we're being intense, and we are building up things in a very aggressive way because based on whatever step you're in, you should be intensely focused on doing that thing. And sometimes the thing that you're doing is going to be over many, many years. But again, especially building up that financial foundation, that should be done in a relatively short time. And so we want to really attack that with all the income and all the bandwidth that we have mentally and really knock those things out to get ourselves moved on into a place where we can start being financially free in a real way. So thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long-form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. So tune in tomorrow as I continue talking about personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.